I was sitting alone by the fireplace on Christmas night, watching shadows dance across the walls while my daughter's laughter echoed from the dining room. The warmth from the fire couldn't touch the cold settling in my chest. 12 people sat around that long table, eating, drinking, celebrating, and I wasn't one of them. My seat had been taken. Not stolen. Not borrowed. Taken. By a man who'd known my daughter for less than 5 years, while I'd spent 73 years building the life that made this moment possible. The worst part. She let it happen. My Rebecca. My only child. The girl I'd raised alone after her mother died, the one I'd worked double shifts for, the one I'd taught to ride a bike and drive a car and balance a checkbook. She looked right past me like I was furniture that didn't match her new decor. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because what happened that night didn't start at the dinner table. It started weeks before, with a phone call that should have warned me things were changing. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. See, for 50 years, Christmas belonged to me and Clara. We'd host it at our house, the small ranch on Maple Street with the crooked front steps and the kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon. Clara would make her famous apple pie, and I'd handle everything else. The turkey, the ham, the decorations, all of it. She used to say I was born to host, that I had a gift for making people feel at home. After she passed 8 years ago, I kept the tradition alive. Every Christmas, I'd drive to Rebecca's old apartment with a trunk full of gifts and the same plaid red shirt Clara gave me our last Christmas together. Rebecca would hug me tight and say, "Dad, you didn't have to do all this," but her eyes would light up like she was 10 years old again. That's what Christmas meant to me. Not the food or the presents. The light in my daughter's eyes. The proof that even without Clara, I could still make our family feel whole. Last November, everything shifted. Rebecca called on a Tuesday evening. I was watching the news, half asleep in my recliner, when her number flashed across my phone. Dad. Her voice had that high, excited pitch that usually meant good news. I have something to tell you. I'm listening, sweetheart. Lucas and I bought a house. A real house, Dad. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, this gorgeous marble kitchen. We finally have space for a proper Christmas dinner. I smiled. My son-in-law Lucas was ambitious, always climbing some corporate ladder I didn't fully understand. If he'd managed to buy Rebecca her dream house, good for him. That's wonderful, honey. I'm proud of you both. So here's the thing, she continued, talking faster now. We want to host Christmas this year. At our place. We're inviting both families, mine and Lucas's. His parents, his sister, everyone. It's going to be perfect. Both families. I felt something shift in my gut, but I pushed it down. Sounds like quite the party. It will be. Oh, Dad, you're going to love this house. The dining room table seats 12. Can you believe it? 12 people. I'd never needed a table that big. For 50 years, Clara and I made do with 6 chairs and whoever could squeeze in. But times change. Kids grow up. They build their own traditions. That's natural. That's good. I'll be there early to help set up, I said. You know me. Can't resist getting my hands in the kitchen. There was a pause. Just a beat too long. Actually, Dad, Lucas's parents are coming early to help. Maybe just arrive around 6? Dinner's at 7. 6 o'clock. For 50 years, I'd been there at noon, stringing lights and peeling potatoes and making sure everything was perfect. Now I was being bumped to 6. Sure thing, sweetheart, I said, keeping my voice light. Whatever works for you. You're the best, Dad. Love you. She hung up before I could say it back. I sat there in my recliner, phone in my lap, staring at the dark TV screen. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't name it. Maybe I was being sensitive. Maybe I was just getting old and resistant to change. Clara used to say I was stubborn about traditions. So I let it go. I didn't question it. I just marked December 25th on my calendar and told myself it would be fine. I had no idea that by the end of that night, I'd lose more than just a chair. I'd lose something I couldn't get back, something I didn't even know could be taken from me. What happens when the people you sacrifice everything for forget what you're worth? Drop a comment if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, because what comes next will break your heart before it puts it back together. The weeks before Christmas crawled by like they always do when you're looking forward to something. I kept myself busy with the usual routines: morning coffee at the diner on 5th Street, afternoon walks around the neighborhood, evenings watching old westerns on TV. But my mind kept drifting to that Christmas dinner, imagining how nice it would be to see Rebecca in her new house, to meet this whole side of Lucas's family I'd only heard about in passing. I'd met his parents exactly twice. Once at the wedding 4 years ago, and once at some charity event Rebecca dragged me to last spring. Mr. Grant, Lucas's father, was a retired corporate lawyer, the kind of man who wore expensive watches and talked about golf courses I'd never heard of. His wife was pleasant enough, always smiling but never quite meeting your eyes. They lived in some gated community an hour north, the kind of place with a guard booth and fountains in every yard. They weren't bad people, just different. The type who measured success by the size of your house and the brand of your car. I'd spent my life measuring it by whether my kid had food on the table and shoes that fit. We didn't have much in common. But Rebecca loved Lucas, and Lucas came from these people, so I made an effort. I smiled at their stories about European vacations and investment portfolios. I nodded when Mr. Grant talked about his glory days winning cases for Fortune 500 companies. I played the part of the humble working-class father-in-law who knew his place. Clara wouldn't have done that. She would have called them out on their nonsense, made them laugh at themselves, brought them down to earth with one of her sharp little observations. But Clara wasn't here anymore, and I'd gotten used to keeping the peace. 3 days before Christmas, I drove to the mall to pick up gifts. I'd already bought Rebecca a cashmere scarf she'd mentioned wanting and a new set of kitchen knives for her and Lucas. But I wanted something extra, something that showed I was paying attention to her new life. I found a beautiful picture frame in an antique shop, real cherry wood, hand-carved corners, the kind of craftsmanship you don't see anymore. I thought she could put a photo of her new house in it, or maybe a family picture from Christmas dinner. I spent more than I should have, but it felt right. It felt like something Clara would have chosen. On my way out, I passed a furniture store and stopped to look at the dining room sets in the window. There was one that reminded me of the mahogany table my father built, the one Clara and I raised Rebecca around, the one that held 50 Christmases worth of memories. I stood there for a while, hands in my pockets, feeling a strange ache I couldn't quite name. That table was still in my house, covered with a cloth to keep the dust off. Rebecca hadn't wanted it when she moved out of her apartment. Said it was too old-fashioned, wouldn't fit her aesthetic. I understood. Young people want new things, modern things. But part of me wished she'd taken it anyway, just to keep the connection alive. I shook off the feeling and drove home. This wasn't about me or my old table. This was about Rebecca building her own life, and I needed to support that. Even if it meant letting go of traditions that didn't fit anymore. Christmas Eve morning, I pressed my red plaid shirt and laid it out on the bed. Clara had given it to me 30 years ago, said the color brought out the warmth in my eyes. I'd worn it every Christmas since, even after she was gone. It was worn soft now, the collar a little frayed, but it still felt like home. I wrapped the gifts carefully, using the good paper Clara always insisted on. None of those cheap, crinkly bags. Real wrapping paper with neat hospital corners and hand-tied bows. She'd taught me how to do it right, said presentation mattered. I could almost hear her voice in my head. Howard, if you're going to give someone something, give it with pride. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the next day, about walking into Rebecca's new house and seeing her happy in a space she'd created. I thought about meeting Lucas's family properly, about sitting around that big table and being part of something new. Maybe it wouldn't be like the old Christmases, but that didn't mean it couldn't be good. I finally dozed off around 3 in the morning, and when I woke up, it was Christmas. The day felt different. The sky was that flat winter gray that presses down on everything, and the streets were empty except for a few cars heading to family gatherings. I made myself eggs and toast, checked my watch a dozen times, and tried not to leave too early. Rebecca had said 6 o'clock, and I didn't want to seem overeager or get in the way of Lucas's parents. At 5:30, I couldn't wait anymore. I loaded the gifts into my trunk, put on Clara's shirt, and headed out. The drive to Brookville took 40 minutes, through neighborhoods that got nicer with every mile. By the time I pulled up to Rebecca's street, the houses had gone from comfortable to impressive: wide lawns, stone facades, 3-car garages. Her house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, a 2-story colonial with white pillars and a wraparound porch. Christmas lights lined the roof and wrapped around the porch columns. Through the front window, I could see a massive tree, decorated within an inch of its life. I sat in my car for a minute, taking it all in. This was what I'd worked for. This was the dream: to give your kid a better life than you had, to see them succeed and build something beautiful. So why did I feel like I was visiting a stranger's house? I grabbed the gifts and walked up the driveway. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Rebecca stood there in a dark green dress, hair pulled back, looking so much like Clara it took my breath away. "Dad." She hugged me quickly, then stepped back. "You're early." "Just a few minutes," I said, smiling. Couldn't help myself. She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. "Come in, come in. Lucas's parents just got here, and we're still setting up." I followed her inside, and the first thing I noticed was the smell: rosemary, cinnamon, something rich and savory from the kitchen. The second thing I noticed was the noise. Voices, lots of them, coming from the dining room. "Rebecca, darling, where do you want these napkin rings?" A woman's voice, high and precise. "Lucas, your father needs help with the wine opener." Another voice, younger but just as commanding. Rebecca touched my arm. "Just put your coat in the closet, Dad. I'll be right back." She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me standing in the foyer with my armful of gifts. I found the closet, hung up my coat, and set the presents under the tree with the others. There were already a dozen there, all wrapped in matching silver paper with elaborate bows. Mine looked plain by comparison. Homemade. Out of place. I straightened up and walked toward the dining room, ready to introduce myself and offer to help. But when I reached the doorway, I stopped. The table was set for 12, just like Rebecca said. White china, crystal glasses, gold-trimmed napkins folded into perfect triangles. And at each seat, a small folded card with a name written in elegant calligraphy. I scanned the table, looking for mine. It wasn't at the head, where I usually sat. That was fine. I'd expected that. Lucas would sit there, or maybe his father. That made sense in their house. I found my name halfway down the left side. Not bad. Still part of the main table, still included. I started to feel better. Maybe I'd been worrying over nothing. But then I looked closer, and my stomach dropped. My name had been crossed out. Not erased. Not covered with a new card. Crossed out with a thick black pen, the kind that bleeds through paper. And written above it, in that same careful handwriting, was a different name: Mr. Grant. When Rebecca told me this year would be different, I thought she meant the decorations. I stood there staring at that card, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Rebecca had changed the seating arrangement at the last minute and forgot to print new cards. Maybe Mr. Grant had back problems or needed to sit near the kitchen, or any one of 100 reasonable explanations. But the black pen mark looked deliberate. Angry, almost. Like someone had made a decision and wanted to make sure there was no confusion about it. "Dad." Rebecca's voice snapped me back. She was standing beside me, holding a serving platter. "Everything okay?" I pointed at the card. Tried to keep my voice casual. "Looks like there was a mix-up with the seating." She glanced down, and something flickered across her face. Not surprise. More like she'd been caught doing something she'd hoped I wouldn't notice. "Oh, right. Yeah, we had to do some rearranging." She set down the platter and picked up the card, studying it like she'd never seen it before. "Lucas's dad, Mr. Grant, he's kind of the patriarch on their side. You know how it is. We thought it would be nice to give him the honored spot." The honored spot. The same spot I'd held at every Christmas dinner for 50 years. "Sure," I said. Smiled like it didn't matter. "Makes sense. Where am I sitting?" She pointed vaguely toward the other end of the table. "We'll find you a good seat. Don't worry. Don't worry." Like I was a kid afraid of sitting alone at lunch. Before I could respond, Lucas appeared from the kitchen. He was wearing a sweater that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill, and his hair was styled like he was about to film a commercial for expensive cologne. "Howard. Good to see you." He shook my hand with the kind of firm grip that felt more like a business transaction than a greeting. "Glad you could make it. Glad I could make it. To my daughter's house. For Christmas. Wouldn't miss it," I said. "Great, great. Listen, we're still getting things ready, so just make yourself comfortable. There's drinks in the living room if you want something." He was already turning away, talking to Rebecca about whether the turkey needed more time. I stood there feeling like a guest at my own daughter's celebration. Not a father. Not family. A guest. I walked into the living room and found Mr. Grant holding court near the fireplace. He was a tall man, maybe my age but carrying himself like he was 20 years younger. Sharp suit, perfectly white hair, the kind of confident posture that comes from never doubting your own importance. "Howard." He spotted me and raised his glass. "The man of the hour. Come, come. Let me introduce you to everyone." Man of the hour. I'd been in the house for 10 minutes and already felt like I'd been here too long. Mr. Grant introduced me to his wife, Patricia, who gave me a polite smile and a handshake that barely qualified as contact. Then his daughter, Melissa, who was on her phone and acknowledged me with a nod. Then a couple of cousins whose names I immediately forgot because they looked at me the way you look at the help. "So, Howard," Mr. Grant said, settling into the armchair by the fire. "Rebecca tells me you're retired. What did you do before?" "Carpenter," I said. "Mostly residential. Built a lot of houses in this area, actually." "Ah, working with your hands. Admirable." He said it the way people say admirable when they mean simple. "I was in corporate law myself. Mergers and acquisitions, mostly. Spent 30 years in the courtroom and boardroom. You probably wouldn't believe some of the cases I handled." He launched into a story about some lawsuit involving a pharmaceutical company and millions of dollars and legal maneuvers I didn't understand and didn't care about. I nodded at the right moments, made sounds of interest, let him perform. Patricia chimed in occasionally with details he'd forgotten, which opposing counsel said what, which judge ruled which way. They had the rhythm of people who'd told these stories 100 times, who defined themselves by their wins and their status. I thought about Clara. She would have asked Mr. Grant what his favorite Christmas memory was, or what he built with his hands as a kid. She would have found the human being underneath all that performance. But I didn't have her gift. I just stood there, drink in hand, feeling smaller with every word he spoke. Melissa glanced up from her phone long enough to say, "Daddy, tell him about the Henderson case." That one's unbelievable. And off he went again. Another story. Another conquest. Another reminder that his life had been important in ways mine never was. I excused myself after the third story and wandered back toward the dining room. Rebecca was adjusting the centerpiece, a massive arrangement of white roses and pine branches that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "Need any help, sweetheart?" I asked. She looked up, startled, like she'd forgotten I was there. "Oh, no, Dad, we're good. Just finishing touches. Why don't you go relax? You've earned it." Earned it. Like I was ancient. Like I'd done my time and now I should just sit quietly while the important people handled things. I opened my mouth to say something. What, I don't know, but Lucas's voice boomed from the kitchen. "Becca, we need you in here." She touched my arm quickly. "Just a minute, okay?" Then she was gone. I stood alone in that perfect dining room with its perfect table and perfect place settings, staring at the seat that used to be mine. The thing about getting old is you start to see patterns. You notice when people's voices change around you, when they start talking slower or louder like you might not understand. You notice when invitations become obligations, when love starts to feel like duty. I'd been noticing things with Rebecca for a while now. The way her calls got shorter. The way she'd mention Lucas's family more than me. The way she'd started saying things like, "Lucas thinks," or "Lucas's dad says," when she used to ask what I thought. But I'd told myself I was imagining it. That I was being oversensitive. That every father feels a little lost when their daughter gets married and starts building a life that doesn't revolve around them anymore. Standing in that dining room, looking at my crossed-out name, I realized I hadn't been imagining anything. Something had shifted. And I'd been too afraid to see it clearly. The doorbell rang. More of Lucas's family arriving. The house filled with voices and laughter and the clatter of coats being hung and gifts being added to the pile under the tree. I retreated to the living room and found a spot on the couch near the window. From there, I could see everything but be part of nothing. I watched Rebecca hug Lucas's cousins, listened to Mr. Grant tell another story about his glory days, saw Patricia directing traffic like a general commanding troops. Nobody looked for me. Nobody asked if I needed anything. I was 73 years old, sitting in my daughter's house on Christmas, and I might as well have been invisible. At 6:45, Rebecca announced dinner was ready. Everyone filed into the dining room, excited and chattering. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my years in my knees and back, and followed. The table looked like something out of a magazine. The food smelled incredible. The candles flickered. Everything was perfect except for one thing. There were 12 chairs, 12 place settings, 12 name cards, and mine was still crossed out. I scanned the table again, looking for where I was supposed to sit. Maybe they'd moved my card. Maybe there was a spot at the end, or near the kitchen, or anywhere. But I couldn't find it. Every seat had a name, and none of them were mine. Rebecca was helping her mother-in-law sit down. Lucas was pouring wine. Everyone was finding their places, settling in, reaching for napkins. I stood at the edge of the room, holding my breath, waiting for someone to notice. And that's when I realized, she hadn't just moved my seat. She'd erased it. I laughed it off when Rebecca brushed past me to help Patricia with her napkin. But the way she looked at Mr. Grant, not me, told me something was changing. I kept standing there, waiting for someone to acknowledge the obvious problem. Waiting for Rebecca to say, "Oh Dad, sorry, your card must have fallen off," or, "We forgot to set your place." Waiting for any explanation that would make this make sense. But everyone was too busy settling into their seats, admiring the food, complimenting Rebecca on the decorations. Mr. Grant took his place at the head of the table, my place, and spread his napkin across his lap like he'd been sitting there his whole life. Lucas noticed me first. He glanced up from pouring wine, and his face did something complicated. Not quite guilty, not quite concerned. Just uncomfortable, like I was a problem he hadn't wanted to deal with. "Howard," he said quietly, "give us just a second. We're sorting out the seating." Sorting out the seating. Like I was a last-minute addition nobody had planned for. Rebecca appeared at my elbow, her voice low and rushed. "Dad, I'm so sorry. We had a mix-up with the count. I thought we had enough chairs, but Lucas's aunt decided to come last minute, and—" "It's fine," I said, because what else was I supposed to say? Make a scene? Demand my seat back? I was 73 years old, not 3. "We'll figure something out," she said, but she was already looking away, distracted by Patricia asking about the cranberry sauce. I stepped back from the table and did a quick count. 12 people. 12 seats. Me standing. The math wasn't complicated. Mr. Grant cleared his throat. "Rebecca, darling, should we wait or go ahead and serve?" "Go ahead," she called from the kitchen. "Dad's fine. He'll find a spot. He'll find a spot." Like I was playing musical chairs at a children's party. I walked to the far end of the table where there was a small gap between 2 occupied seats. Maybe I could squeeze in there, pull up a stool from the kitchen. But when I got closer, I saw there wasn't enough room. The chairs were too close together, the table too precisely arranged. Melissa was sitting in one of those chairs, still on her phone. She glanced up at me, then back down, completely unbothered by the fact that a grown man was hovering over her shoulder with nowhere to go. I heard Clara's voice in my head, sharp and clear. "Walk out. Right now. Don't make excuses. Just leave." But I couldn't. Not yet. Not without understanding how this had happened, how my own daughter could look at me standing there and choose to do nothing. Lucas appeared again, this time with a strained smile. "Howard, listen. Why don't you sit in the living room for now? We'll bring you a plate. Honestly, the table's kind of crowded anyway. You might be more comfortable." "I'm fine," I interrupted. Kept my voice steady. "I'll just take a phone call. I've got a buddy who usually calls around this time anyway." It was a lie. Walter wouldn't call until tomorrow. But I needed an excuse to leave that room with some dignity intact. I pulled out my phone and walked toward the front hallway, pretending to answer a call that wasn't coming. Behind me, I heard the conversation resume, the clink of glasses, someone laughing at something Mr. Grant said. I stood in the hallway, phone pressed to my ear, staring at nothing. Giving them time to miss me. Giving Rebecca a chance to realize what she'd done and come apologize. Giving someone, anyone, the opportunity to make this right. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The hallway grew colder. I could hear the dinner conversation getting louder, more animated. Someone proposed a toast. Glass clinked against glass. They were celebrating. And I wasn't part of it. I lowered my phone and walked slowly back toward the dining room. Maybe things had shifted. Maybe someone had left the table, or they'd rearranged the seats, or Rebecca had set up a spot for me. But when I reached the doorway, what I saw stopped me cold. The table was exactly the same. 12 people. 12 seats. All occupied. But now, sitting in the chair with my crossed-out name card, was Mr. Grant. Not at the head of the table where he'd been before. In my original spot, halfway down the left side. He'd moved. Taken the seat that was supposed to be mine. Was eating from what should have been my plate, drinking from what should have been my glass. I must have made a sound, some small noise of disbelief, because he looked up. "Oh, Howard." He wiped his mouth with his napkin. "I was wondering where you'd gone. Rebecca said this seat opened up, so I moved down here. Better view of the tree, you know. Hope you don't mind." Hope I don't mind. Like he was doing me a favor by taking what was mine. I looked at Rebecca. She was at the other end of the table, deep in conversation with Patricia, not looking at me. Not seeing me. Or maybe seeing me and choosing to look away. No problem, I heard myself say. I was just looking for the bathroom. Another lie. I was collecting them now, stringing them together into a rope I could use to hang my dignity from. Mr. Grant smiled, not unkind, just oblivious, and turned back to his conversation with Lucas's aunt. They were talking about vacation homes, rental properties, investment opportunities. The kind of talk that assumes everyone at the table has money to throw around. I stood there for another moment, invisible in the doorway, while my family ate Christmas dinner without me. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I turned around and walked to the living room. Found the old recliner by the fireplace, the one piece of furniture that looked like it didn't belong in this perfect house, probably something Lucas's parents didn't want but couldn't throw away. I sat down, stared at the fire, listened to the sound of my daughter's laughter mixing with the voices of people who'd known her for a fraction of the time I had. And I started asking myself questions I'd never wanted to ask. When did I become disposable? When did my presence stop mattering? When did the man who raised her, who sacrificed everything to give her a good life, become less important than impressing her husband's family? The fire crackled. In the dining room, someone clinked a knife against a glass and called for another toast. More laughter. More celebration. I closed my eyes and thought about Clara. Wondered what she would say if she could see this. Wondered if she'd be disappointed in Rebecca or disappointed in me for not standing up for myself. Probably both. The house smelled like rosemary and cinnamon and would smoke. It should have felt like Christmas. Should have felt warm and full and right. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of a party I wasn't invited to, watching through a window at a life that used to include me. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't part of the family table anymore. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 10 minutes. Could have been 30. Time moved differently when you're trying not to feel what you're feeling. The fire burned lower. Voices from the dining room rose and fell like waves. I heard Rebecca laugh at something, that bright, musical sound she'd inherited from Clara. Used to make me smile every time I heard it. Now it just made my chest tight. I pulled out my phone. Not to call anyone. Just to have something to look at. Some way to occupy my hands and eyes so if anyone walked by they wouldn't see an old man sitting alone with nothing to do. Walter had sent a text an hour ago. Merry Christmas, you old coot. Say hi to Rebecca for me. I typed back, Merry Christmas. Having a great time. Another lie. They were piling up faster than I could keep track of. From where I sat, I could see straight through to the dining room. Not all of it, just slices of the scene between doorways and furniture. I watched Mr. Grant gesturing with his fork, telling another story. Watched Lucas's mother nod along, her face arranged in that practiced smile people wear when they're enjoying being agreed with. Watched Rebecca move around the table, refilling wine glasses and checking on people, playing the perfect hostess. She'd learned that from Clara too. The way to make everyone feel welcome, seen, cared for. Everyone except me, apparently. My phone buzzed. A notification from some weather app I'd downloaded and never used. I swiped it away and stared at the home screen, a photo of me and Rebecca from 3 Christmases ago, both of us wearing ridiculous Santa hats Clara had bought before she got sick. Rebecca looked happy in that picture. Really happy, not the performance kind. And I looked like a man who still believed he mattered. Dad. I looked up. Rebecca was standing in the doorway, empty wine bottle in one hand, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You okay? Was I okay? That's what you ask someone when you've already decided their answer doesn't matter. Fine, I said. Kept my voice light. Just needed a breather. It's warm in there with all those people. She nodded, but her eyes were already drifting back toward the dining room. Someone was calling her name. Needing something. Always needing something from her, and apparently I was at the bottom of that list. "We're about to serve dessert," she said. "You'll come back for that, right? Come back." Like I'd left. Like this was my choice. "Sure," I said. "Wouldn't miss it." She smiled, relieved, I think, and disappeared back into the kitchen. I heard her say something to Lucas, heard him laugh, heard the clatter of plates being cleared. I should have gotten up then. Should have walked into that dining room and stood at the end of the table and asked, out loud, where I was supposed to sit. Should have made someone acknowledge what they'd done. But I didn't. Because the truth was, I already knew the answer. I wasn't supposed to sit anywhere. I was supposed to fade into the background, be grateful for whatever crumbs of attention they threw my way, and not make trouble. That's what old people do, right? We get quiet, get small, get invisible. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Walter calling. I almost didn't answer, didn't want him to hear whatever was in my voice right now, but talking to someone, anyone, felt better than sitting in silence. "Howard, Merry Christmas, you old bastard." Walter's voice boomed through the phone, loud and cheerful and completely at odds with how I was feeling. He was 75, still sharp as ever, spent most of his time volunteering at the community center and making everyone laugh. "Merry Christmas, Walt. You at Rebecca's? How's the big fancy dinner?" I looked toward the dining room. From this angle, I could see part of the tree, all those presents underneath, the perfect decorations that probably took hours to arrange. "It's good," I said. "Real nice. You sound like you're at a funeral. What's wrong?" Nothing got past Walter. We'd known each other 40 years, worked construction together before he retired. He could read me better than I could read myself sometimes. "Nothing's wrong. Just tired." "Bullshit. I know tired Howard, and I know something happened Howard. Which one am I talking to?" I almost told him. Almost said the words out loud. My daughter erased me from her Christmas dinner. But saying it would make it real, would make it something I couldn't take back or pretend didn't hurt. "It's nothing," I said finally. "Different kind of Christmas this year, that's all. Big crowd. Different setup." Walter was quiet for a moment. Then, "You sitting alone right now?" "I'm in the living room. Taking a break. While everyone else eats." Goddamn Walter and his ability to cut through bullshit. "It's fine," I said. "Table was full. They'll bring me a plate." "Howard." "Walt, I gotta go. They're about to serve dessert." "You call me later," he said firmly. "I mean it. You call me and tell me what's really going on." "Will do. Merry Christmas." I hung up before he could push harder. Sat there holding the phone, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of the evening settle over me like a heavy coat. In the dining room, someone clinked a glass. I heard Lucas's voice, raised and formal. "I'd like to make a toast." The conversation quieted. Chairs scraped as people turned to listen. First, to my beautiful wife Rebecca, who put together this incredible meal and made this house feel like home. "To Rebecca. To Rebecca," everyone echoed. The sound of glasses clinking filled the air. I waited for him to mention me. Waited for someone, Rebecca, Lucas, anyone, to say. And to Howard, who drove an hour to be here, who raised the woman we're celebrating, who's been doing Christmas right for 73 years. But the toast moved on. To Lucas's parents for their support. To family, health, prosperity. To everything and everyone except the man sitting alone in the next room. When the toast ended and the conversation resumed, I stood up slowly. My knees cracked. My back ached. I felt every single one of my 73 years in a way I never had before. I walked quietly to the front closet and took out my coat. In my pocket, I found my car keys. Through the doorway, I could see Rebecca's back as she moved around the kitchen, preparing. I put on my coat in that front hallway, moving slow and deliberate, giving someone, anyone, a chance to notice I was leaving. The house was still full of noise. Laughter. The scrape of dessert forks against plates. Someone asking for coffee. Nobody came. I zipped up my coat and pulled my car keys from my pocket. They jangled loud enough that I thought surely Rebecca would hear, would come rushing out asking where I was going. But the kitchen sounds continued. The conversation rolled on. The world kept spinning without me in it. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cold December night. The air bit at my face, sharp and clean after the warmth of the house. Christmas lights blinked on the houses across the street. Somewhere down the block, kids were laughing, probably playing with new toys. I stood on Rebecca's porch for a moment, looking back through the window at the glow of the dining room, at the shapes of people moving around, living their lives, celebrating their perfect Christmas. Without me. I walked to my car and got in. Started the engine. Sat there letting it warm up, still half expecting Rebecca to come running out, apologizing, begging me to stay. She didn't come. So I backed out of the driveway and drove home alone on Christmas night, past houses full of families, past churches with nativity scenes lit up in front, past the diner on 5th Street that was closed and dark. When I got home, my house felt emptier than usual. The Christmas tree I'd put up a week ago sat in the corner, lights off, looking sad and pointless. I decorated it the way Clara taught me. White lights, red and gold ornaments, the angel she'd bought at a craft fair 20 years ago perched on top. I didn't turn the lights on. Just hung my coat in the closet, kicked off my shoes, and sat down in my recliner in the dark. The silence was different here. Not the excluded kind, where you can hear life happening without you. Just empty. Quiet. The kind of silence that makes you hear your own thoughts too loud. I kept replaying the evening. Seeing that crossed-out name card. Standing in the doorway with nowhere to sit. The casual way Mr. Grant took what was mine. The way Rebecca looked past me like I was furniture that didn't match anymore. My phone buzzed. Rebecca's name on the screen. A text. Dad, where did you go? We were just about to have dessert. I stared at that message for a long time. Wanted to type back, where did I go? I've been gone all night and you just now noticed. But I didn't. I just turned off my phone and set it on the table beside me. The thing about getting old is you have time to think. Too much time, maybe. You sit in the dark and you replay your whole life like a movie you've seen too many times. You remember every sacrifice, every choice, every moment you put someone else first. I'd worked double shifts after Clara died so Rebecca could finish college without loans. I'd fixed her car for free every time something broke. I'd been there for every graduation, every birthday, every moment she needed me. And tonight, I didn't even get a chair at her table. The next morning, I woke up on the recliner, neck stiff, still wearing yesterday's clothes. My phone had 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. All from Rebecca. Dad, please call me back. I'm worried, where are you? Dad, this isn't funny, please answer. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, looking at those messages. Part of me wanted to call her back, hear her apologize, accept whatever explanation she'd come up with. That's what I'd always done. Smoothed things over. Kept the peace. Made it easy for her to treat me however she wanted because I'd always forgive her anyway. But another part of me, a part that had been quiet for too long, was tired of being easy to dismiss. I didn't call her back that day. Or the next. Or the one after that. For 3 days, I let her sit with what she'd done. Let her wonder. Let her feel a fraction of what I'd felt sitting in that living room alone. On the 4th day, Walter showed up at my door with a bag of groceries and that look on his face that said he wasn't leaving until we talked. You gonna tell me what happened, or do I have to guess? He pushed past me into the kitchen, started putting away the bread and milk and coffee he'd brought. Nothing happened. Howard, I've known you since before your hair went gray. Don't insult my intelligence. So I told him. All of it. The crossed-out name card, the missing chair, sitting alone while my family celebrated without me. I said it all flat and factual, like I was describing something that happened to someone else. Walter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that changed everything. What are you gonna do about it? What can I do? She's my daughter. I can't just what? Hold her accountable? Expect respect. Howard, you taught her better than this. If you let it slide, you're telling her it's okay to treat you like nothing. I opened my mouth to argue, to make excuses. But the words didn't come because he was right. I forgive her, I said finally. Forgiving her and teaching her are two different things, Walter said. You can do both. That night, after Walter left, I sat in my recliner and thought about what he'd said. About accountability. About respect. About the difference between forgiveness and permission. And I realized something I'd been avoiding. If I didn't correct this, it would happen again. And again. Each time a little worse. Until one day I'd be completely erased from my daughter's life and she wouldn't even notice because I trained her to think my presence didn't matter. Clara's voice came back to me. Something she'd said years ago when Rebecca was a teenager testing boundaries. If you love someone, you teach them how to love you back. I'd forgotten that lesson. Gotten soft in my old age. Accepted less than I deserved because I was afraid of losing what little I had left. But silence has a way of turning into strength when you sit with it long enough. And I was about to find mine. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? Drop a comment and let us know, because what Howard does next will show you that sometimes the quietest response is the loudest message. On the 8th day after Christmas, I finally called Rebecca back. She answered on the first ring. Dad. Oh my God, Dad. I've been so worried. I'm fine, sweetheart. My voice was calm. Steady. I'd practiced this conversation in my head a dozen times. I needed some time to think. About what? Dad, you just disappeared on Christmas. You didn't even say goodbye. Lucas and I looked everywhere for you, and I left because there was nowhere for me to sit, Rebecca. Silence on the other end. Not the confused kind. The caught kind. Dad, I told you we had a mix-up with the seating. It wasn't personal. You could have just said something instead of leaving like that. Could have just said something. Like the problem was my silence instead of her erasure. I'm not calling to argue, I said. I'm calling because I've been thinking about the future. About making sure things are in order. I'm 73 now, and I want to be responsible about my estate planning. Her tone shifted. Became cautious. Okay, that's good. That's smart. I met with my attorney this week. We're making some updates to my will. I wanted you to know. Oh. A pause. What kind of updates? I looked out my kitchen window at the backyard where I'd built a swing set for Rebecca when she was 6. Where Clara and I had hosted her birthday parties and taught her to ride a bike. Just making sure everything reflects my current wishes. Making sure the people who value my presence get a fair share of what I've built. Another pause. Longer this time. Dad, what does that mean? It means I've been thinking about who deserves to inherit what I've worked for. The cabin up north that my father left me. The investments I've been saving. This house. All of it. You're not. Her voice cracked. You're not cutting me out, are you? The fear in her voice should have made me feel guilty. Should have made me backtrack and reassure her. But I'd spent 3 decades giving her everything, and on the one night it mattered, she'd given me nothing. I'm making sure my legacy goes to people who respect me, I said quietly. People who make room for me at their table. Dad, please. I'm so sorry about Christmas. It was stupid and thoughtless, and I should have. You should have what, Rebecca? Noticed your father standing in the doorway with nowhere to sit? Told your father-in-law he couldn't take my seat? Checked on me once during the entire dinner. She was crying now. I could hear it in her breathing, in the way her words came out broken. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to make Lucas's family feel welcome, and I got overwhelmed and... I understand that, I said, and I meant it. But understanding why it happened doesn't change the fact that it did. And if I don't set boundaries now, when do I? When I'm 80 and you're too busy to visit. When I'm 90 and you're picking out nursing homes. That's not fair. Maybe not. But neither is being invisible in my own daughter's life. I heard her sob. Heard Lucas's voice in the background asking what was wrong. Heard her tell him she needed a minute. What do you want me to do? She asked finally. I want you to think about what Christmas meant to me. What 50 years of tradition meant. What showing up for you, always, for your entire life meant. And then I want you to ask yourself if that was worth a chair at your table. Of course it was. Dad, of course you're worth. Then act like it, Rebecca. Because right now, your actions are telling me something very different from your words. I hung up before she could respond. Set the phone down on the kitchen table and stared at it, half expecting her to call back immediately. She didn't. For the rest of that day, I felt strange. Not angry. Not sad. Just clear. Like I'd been walking around in fog for months and suddenly it had burned away. Walter called that evening. You talked to her? I did. How'd it go? Honestly, I don't know yet. You stand your ground? I did. Good man. He was quiet for a moment. This is the hard part, you know. The part where you stick to what you said even when it hurts. I know. You need anything, you call me. Day or night. You hear. I hear. That night, I pulled out the folder my attorney had given me. Estate planning documents. Trust papers. Beneficiary forms. I told Rebecca I was making changes, but I hadn't actually done it yet. Now it was time to follow through. I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and started making decisions. Real ones. Not threats. Not manipulations. Just honest assessments of where my legacy should go. The cabin, the one my father built with his own hands, the one where I taught Rebecca to fish and skip stones, I decided to donate it to a veterans organization. They could use it for retreats, for men who'd served their country and needed a quiet place to heal. Half my investments, the money I'd saved working overtime and skipping vacations and fixing my own car instead of paying mechanics, I decided to split between a local charity that provided Christmas dinners for the elderly and Walter's granddaughter, Sarah, who was a nurse and had visited me 3 times in the hospital when I had pneumonia last year. This house and the rest of my savings would still go to Rebecca. I wasn't trying to punish her. Just show her that respect matters. That presence matters. That you can't assume people will always be there when you've given them reasons to leave. I signed the documents and sealed them in an envelope for my attorney. Then I sat back and waited to see what Rebecca would do with the truth I'd just given her. 2 days later, she showed up at my door. Her eyes were red. She looked like she hadn't slept. Lucas wasn't with her. Dad, we need to talk. Come in. She sat on the couch where she used to sit as a kid, watching Saturday morning cartoons while I made pancakes. Now she was 35, married, living in a house I'd never feel comfortable in, and looking at me like I was a stranger. "I talked to your attorney," she said. "I told him it was okay to discuss things with you if you called." "Half your estate, Dad? To charity? To people who aren't even family?" "People who treat me like family," I corrected gently. Her face crumpled. "So this is my punishment? For one bad night?" "It's not punishment, Rebecca. It's a lesson. One I should have taught you a long time ago." "What lesson?" "That if I make a mistake you'll write me out of your life. That respect isn't optional. That love without respect is just obligation. And I don't want to be anyone's obligation." She stared at me for a long time. Then she said something that broke my heart and mended it at the same time. "You're right." 2 words. But they carried the weight of everything I'd been trying to say. "I've been taking you for granted," she continued, voice shaking. "Treating you like you'll always be there no matter how I act. Like your feelings don't matter as much as Lucas's family's feelings. And that's wrong. It's so wrong, Dad, and I'm sorry." I wanted to hug her. Wanted to tell her it was okay, that I forgave her, that we could forget the whole thing. But Walter's words came back. "Forgiving and teaching are 2 different things." "I forgive you," I said. "But the changes to my estate stand. Not because I don't love you. Because I do. Enough to teach you this before I'm gone." She wiped her eyes. Nodded slowly. "I understand." "Do you?" "I think so. You're showing me that actions have consequences. That you can't treat people badly and expect them to keep giving you everything." "That's exactly right." She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the street where I'd taught her to ride that bike so many years ago. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. If I do better, if I show you I've learned this lesson, will you change your mind?" I thought about that. About whether this was really about the money or about something deeper. "Maybe," I said. "But not right away. And not because you're trying to earn it back. Only if it's real. Only if you understand that I deserve respect not because I'm giving you an inheritance, but because I'm your father and I've earned it." Her voice trembled when she asked, "Can I still see you? Can we still have a relationship?" "Of course. But on different terms. Terms where I'm not just convenient when you need me and invisible when you don't." She nodded. Crying again, but different now. Like she was finally understanding something she should have known all along. She hugged me before she left. Said she loved me. Promised to do better. I believed her. Or at least, I wanted to. But I also knew that real change takes time. And whether she proved me right or wrong, I'd already reclaimed something more valuable than any inheritance. My dignity. When was the last time you stood up for yourself, even though it hurt? Comment below, because Howard's about to learn something that will change everything. 3 weeks went by before I heard from Rebecca again. I told myself I wouldn't count the days, wouldn't sit by the phone waiting, wouldn't let her silence bother me. But of course it did. She was still my daughter. Still the little girl who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares, who'd hold my hand crossing streets long after she was old enough to know better. Walter checked in on me twice that week. Brought groceries. Sat with me watching old westerns. Never asked about Rebecca directly, just watched me with those knowing eyes that said he understood what this cost. On the 21st day, my attorney called. "Howard, I wanted to give you a heads up. Your daughter called again. Asked some questions about the trust documents." "What kind of questions?" "Practical ones. When they'd take effect, who would manage the distributions, whether there were conditions attached." He paused. She seemed calm. Not angry. Just trying to understand. "What did you tell her?" "The truth." That you'd made your decisions, that they were final unless you chose to change them, and that they reflected your current wishes. She thanked me and hung up. I thanked him and hung up too. Sat at my kitchen table wondering what Rebecca was thinking. Was she planning something? Trying to figure out how to change my mind? Or was she genuinely trying to accept what I'd done? That night, she showed up at my door again. This time she wasn't alone. Lucas stood beside her, looking uncomfortable in jeans and a polo shirt, the most casual I'd ever seen him. They were holding hands. "Dad," Rebecca said, "can we come in?" I stepped aside. They sat on the couch together, but this time there was something different in Rebecca's posture. Less defensive. More open. "Lucas has something he wants to say," she said, squeezing his hand. Lucas cleared his throat. Looked at me directly for the first time since I'd met him. "Mr. Marin, Howard, I owe you an apology. What happened at Christmas was unacceptable. I should have noticed you didn't have a seat. Should have told my father to move. Should have made sure you were comfortable in our home." He paused. I was so focused on impressing my parents that I forgot whose approval actually mattered. I studied him. Looked for signs of performance, of words Rebecca had coached him to say. But his discomfort seemed genuine. His shame real. "I appreciate that," I said. Rebecca leaned forward. "Dad, I've spent the last 3 weeks thinking about what you said. About respect and presence and what family really means. And I realized you were right. I've been treating you like you're supposed to just accept whatever scraps of attention I throw your way. Like you don't have feelings or needs or the right to expect better." "You have," I said simply. I called Grandma Clara's sister Aunt Marie. That surprised me. Marie lived in Florida now, but she and Clara had been close. I hadn't talked to her much since the funeral. I asked her what Grandma would say about all this. And you know what she told me. I shook my head. She said Grandma always worried I'd take you for granted. That I'd get so caught up in my own life I'd forget you were the foundation of it. She made Aunt Marie promise to remind me if she ever saw it happening. Rebecca's voice broke. "She saw it happening, Dad. At Christmas. And she called me the next week and told me exactly what she thought of how I treated you." I felt a lump form in my throat. That sounded exactly like something Clara would arrange. One last lesson from beyond the grave. What did Marie say? That you deserved better. That family isn't about who you impress, it's about who you honor. And that if I couldn't honor my own father, I didn't deserve the family you and Grandma built. Lucas squeezed her hand again. She took a shaky breath. "So we want to make this right. Really right. Not just apologize and move on, but show you we understand what we did wrong." "How?" I asked. "We want you to move in with us." I blinked. That was the last thing I expected. "Rebecca, just hear me out. The house has 4 bedrooms. One of them is just storage right now. We could convert it into a suite for you. Your own space, your own bathroom, your own entrance if you want privacy. But you'd be with us. Part of our daily life, not just someone we see on holidays." Lucas nodded. "It's a big house for just the 2 of us anyway. And honestly, sir, I'd like to get to know you better. Really know you, not just shake your hand at family gatherings." I looked at both of them. Saw the hope in Rebecca's eyes, the genuine intent in Lucas's face. And felt myself resisting. "That's generous," I said carefully. "But I don't think that's the answer." Rebecca's face fell. "Why not?" "Because I don't want to live in your house out of obligation. Or guilt. Or because you're trying to undo what happened. I've lived on my own since your mother died. I've got my routines, my space, my independence. That matters to me. So you don't want to be close to us? I want to be close to you when it's genuine. When you call because you want to talk, not because you remember you should. When you invite me over because you miss me, not because you're checking a box. Lucas spoke up. Then help us figure out how to do that. Because Rebecca's right, we've been treating you wrong. And we want to fix it, but we don't know how. I thought about that. About what I actually wanted from my daughter versus what I thought I should want. Start simple, I said. Call me once a week. Not out of duty. Because you want to hear my voice. Come visit sometimes, just the two of you, not for a holiday or special occasion. Ask me about my life. Tell me about yours. Let me be part of your regular world, not just the ceremonial one. Rebecca was crying again. We can do that. And next Christmas, I continued, if you want to host, I want to help. I want to be there early. I want to sit at that table with my name on a card that isn't crossed out. I want to feel like I belong there, not like I'm lucky to be included. You will, Lucas said firmly. I promise you that. We talked for another hour. They told me about changes they wanted to make, how Lucas had already talked to his parents about boundaries, how Rebecca had started therapy to work through why she'd let things get so bad. I listened and nodded and felt something in my chest start to loosen. Not forgiveness yet, that would take time, but hope. The possibility that maybe this could be fixed. Before they left, Rebecca hugged me tight. Whispered in my ear, I'm going to earn back your respect, Dad. I promise. I know you will, I said. Or you won't. Either way, I'll be okay. She pulled back, looked at me with surprise. That's what I learned these last few weeks, I explained. I'll always love you. But my worth doesn't depend on whether you recognize it. That's the difference between the man who sat in your living room at Christmas and the man standing here now. She nodded. Understanding. Maybe not completely, but enough. After they left, I sat in my recliner and thought about the documents sitting in my attorney's office. The donations to charity, the money set aside for Sarah, the cabin going to veterans. I decided not to change them. Not yet. Not because I wanted to punish Rebecca, but because those choices reflected something true about what I'd learned. That legacy isn't just about money or property. It's about impact. And the people who'd shown me kindness when I needed it, the charity volunteers who'd called to check on me, Sarah who'd sat with me in the hospital, the veterans who'd understand what that cabin meant, they deserved to benefit from what I'd built. Rebecca would still get this house and enough money to be comfortable. But she'd learn that relationships have consequences. That respect isn't negotiable. That you can't put someone last and expect them to leave you everything. And if she proved herself over time, if she showed me through consistent action that she'd truly changed, then maybe I'd reconsider. Maybe I'd update the documents again. But only if it was real. Only if she earned it. Because that's what love with dignity looks like. Sometimes the people we love need to lose something to appreciate what they had. Have you ever had to teach someone this lesson? Let us know in the comments. Spring came early that year. By March, the snow had melted and crocuses were pushing up through the dead grass in my front yard. I spent more time outside, fixing the porch railing that had come loose over winter, repainting the shutters, doing all the small maintenance tasks that keep a house from falling apart. Rebecca called every Tuesday evening, just like she'd promised. At first, the conversations felt stilted, like we were both reading from scripts. But slowly, over weeks, they got easier. More natural. She'd tell me about her day, about problems at work, about fights with Lucas over stupid things like whose turn it was to take out the trash. Normal stuff. Daughter stuff. The kind of calls we used to have before she got so caught up in appearances. Lucas called too, sometimes. Asked my advice about fixing things around their house, about whether he should take a new position at work, about how to handle his father who kept asking intrusive questions about their finances. We talked like people, not like in-laws performing for each other. On a Saturday in April, Rebecca showed up with paint samples and fabric swatches. "What's all this?" I asked. "I'm redecorating the guest room. Thought you might want to weigh in." "Why would I weigh in on your guest room?" She looked at me with that expression that was half smile, half challenge. "Because I'm hoping you'll use it sometimes. Nothing permanent. Just when you want to visit. Or when we have early morning plans and you don't want to drive home late. Or when I want to be part of your regular life," I finished. "Yeah." I looked at the swatches. Soft blues and grays. Calm colors. The kind Clara used to favor. "I like the blue," I said. She smiled. Really smiled, not the nervous kind. "I was hoping you'd say that." We spent that afternoon picking out paint and talking about what furniture might work. Not making commitments. Just planning. Creating possibilities. "Dad," she said as she was packing up to leave, "I want you to know I told Lucas's parents they're not welcome for Christmas this year." I looked up from the paint chips. "You did?" "I did. I told them that last Christmas was unacceptable, that they made you feel unwelcome in our home, and that until they can show you proper respect, they won't be invited to family gatherings." "Rebecca, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. Mr. Grant tried to argue, said it was just a misunderstanding. I told him there was no misunderstanding about taking another man's seat at the table. That you'd built the foundation of our family, and they needed to honor that or stay home." I felt pride swell in my chest. Not because she'd chosen me over them, but because she'd found her backbone, her voice, her ability to set boundaries that reflected her values. How'd they take it? Badly. But honestly, I don't care. Lucas backed me up completely. Said he'd rather have a small Christmas with people who respect each other than a big one where anyone feels invisible. I hugged her then. Held her tight the way I used to when she was little and had fallen off her bike or lost a friend or felt like the world was too big and scary. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. "I'm trying to be someone you can be proud of," she whispered back. In May, Walter organized a barbecue at his place. His daughter and grandkids came, some neighbors, a few guys from our old construction crew. He invited Rebecca and Lucas too. I wasn't sure how it would go. Mixing my daughter with my friend group felt strange, like crossing wires that had always been separate. But Rebecca fit right in. She helped Walter's daughter with the food, played catch with his grandson, sat around the fire pit listening to old construction stories and laughing at jokes she'd probably heard a dozen times. Lucas loosened up too. Took off his fancy watch and rolled up his sleeves and helped flip burgers. Asked the guys about their work, actually listened to their answers, didn't try to one-up them with stories about corporate meetings. At one point, Walter pulled me aside. "Your girl's doing better," he said. "She is. You still keeping those estate documents the way they are?" I watched Rebecca across the yard, laughing at something Walter's daughter said, looking relaxed and genuine in a way I hadn't seen in years. "For now," I said. "She's proving herself. But I want to see consistency. Want to know this isn't just temporary guilt." Walter nodded. "Smart man. You taught me well." "Nah. Clara taught you. I just reminded you what you already knew." By June, Rebecca and I had settled into a routine. Tuesday calls. Saturday visits, sometimes at my place, sometimes at theirs. She'd bring lunch, or I'd cook dinner. We'd watch movies or work on projects or just sit on the porch talking about nothing important. Lucas joined us more often than not. He'd started asking me to teach him basic carpentry, said he wanted to build a bookshelf for Rebecca's birthday. We spent 3 weekends in my garage, measuring and cutting and sanding, talking about life and marriage and what it means to be a man who honors his commitments. I failed you at Christmas, he said one afternoon, unprompted. Failed Rebecca too by not standing up to my parents. You did, I agreed. No point sugarcoating it. I grew up thinking respect meant deference, that you earned it by being important, successful, wealthy. My father taught me that. He ran sandpaper along the edge of a board, creating smooth, even strokes. But you taught me something different. That respect means seeing people's worth even when they can't do anything for you. That's right. I'm trying to be better. Be the kind of man who deserves your daughter. Keep trying, I said. That's all any of us can do. In July, Rebecca called on a Tuesday like always. But this time, her voice was different. Excited. Nervous. Dad, I have news. Good news or bad news? Good news. Great news, actually. She took a breath. I'm pregnant. The world stopped for a second, then rushed back all at once, bringing with it a flood of emotions I hadn't expected. Joy, fear, grief that Clara wasn't here to see this, hope that maybe this next generation would get it right from the start. Dad, you still there? I'm here, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you. We want you involved. Really involved. Not just visits and holidays. We want you to be part of this baby's life from the beginning. I will be, I promised. If you let me, we will. I promise we will. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and cried. First time I'd cried since Clara's funeral. Not sad tears. Not happy tears. Something in between. The release of carrying weight I didn't know I was holding. That night, I called my attorney. I want to update my estate documents, I said. Adding the baby as a beneficiary? Eventually. But not yet. Right now, I want to restore some of what I'd redirected from Rebecca. Not all of it, but more. Because she's pregnant. Because she's proven herself. Shown me over 6 months that she understands what I was trying to teach her. The money won't all go back to her. The charities still deserve their share. But she deserves more than I was giving her. I'll draw up the papers. Thank you, Howard. For what it's worth, I think you handled this whole situation with remarkable wisdom. I handled it the way my wife would have wanted, with love and boundaries. Sometimes that's the same thing. When the phone rang later that night, I expected it to be Walter, checking in like he always did. But it was Rebecca again. Dad, I know this is last minute, but could you come over tomorrow? Lucas and I want to talk to you about something. Everything okay? Everything's perfect. Just come over. Around 2. I'll be there. I hung up wondering what this was about. If they'd changed their minds about wanting me involved. If they were moving. If something was wrong with the pregnancy. But when I showed up the next day, Lucas opened the door with a grin that eased my worry immediately. She's in the dining room, he said. Fair warning, she's been planning this for weeks. I walked in and stopped. The table, that long, perfect table from Christmas, was set for 3. White plates, simple napkins, no fancy arrangements. And at the head of the table, the seat that used to be mine before it was Mr. Grant's, sat a place card with my name. Not crossed out. Not changed. Just there. In my handwriting, the shaky cursive Clara used to tease me about. Rebecca stood beside the table, hands clasped in front of her, eyes shining. I found your old place cards. From all those Christmases at your house. I kept them in a box, and I went through them until I found one in your handwriting. She touched the card gently. This is your seat, Dad. Always. No matter who else comes to dinner. No matter what. This seat is yours. I couldn't speak. could barely breathe. Lucas put his hand on my shoulder. "We mean it, sir. You're the head of this family. And we're never forgetting that again." I sat down in that chair, at the head of that table, in my rightful place. And for the first time since Christmas, I felt like I belonged. Has someone ever made something right after hurting you? Tell us your story in the comments, because Howard's journey is about to come full circle in a way that will restore your faith in family. The months that followed were different. Not perfect, nothing ever is, but real, honest, built on a foundation that had been tested and survived. Rebecca's pregnancy progressed. I went to doctor's appointments when she asked me to, helped Lucas paint the nursery, taught him how to put together the crib properly because men need to know how to build things that keep their children safe. We spent Thanksgiving together, just the three of us. Small, quiet, exactly what family should be. When December rolled around, Rebecca called me early in the month. "Dad, I know Christmas is complicated after last year. If you want to skip it, or do something just us, or whatever you need." "What do you want?" I asked. "I want you here, at our table, in your seat. I want to do it right this time." "Then that's what we'll do." I showed up on Christmas Eve to help with preparations. Lucas opened the door wearing an apron and covered in flour. "She's got me making pie crust from scratch," he said, laughing. "Your daughter has high standards." "She learned from the best," I said, thinking of Clara. We cooked together all afternoon. Just the three of us. No performance. No trying to impress anyone. Rebecca told me to stop peeling potatoes wrong, and I told her she was using too much butter, and Lucas refereed while burning rolls because he was laughing too hard to pay attention to the timer. It felt like home. Like the Christmases Clara and I used to have before everything got complicated. That night, we sat at the table, 3 places set, 3 chairs filled. My name card at the head. Rebecca to my right. Lucas to my left. Lucas said grace, thanking God for family and second chances and the baby coming soon. Rebecca squeezed my hand. And when I looked around that table, I didn't see what was missing. I saw what was there. After dinner, Rebecca brought out a wrapped box. "We have something for you." I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo in the cherrywood frame I'd given her last Christmas, the one she'd never mentioned, that I'd assumed she'd stuck in a closet somewhere. But the photo wasn't of their house or some professional family portrait. It was from that barbecue at Walter's in May. Someone had taken a picture without me noticing. I was sitting in a lawn chair, Rebecca beside me, both of us laughing at something. Her head was tilted toward mine. My hand was on her shoulder. We looked happy, connected, real. Beneath the photo, engraved on a small brass plate, were words that broke me open. Howard Marin. Patriarch. Present. Valued. Loved. I couldn't speak. Just held that frame and tried not to cry in front of them. "That's who you are, Dad," Rebecca said softly. "And we're never going to let you forget it again." In February, Rebecca went into labor 3 weeks early. I got the call at 2 in the morning. Lucas, breathless and panicked, saying they were heading to the hospital. I threw on clothes and drove through empty streets, praying the way I hadn't prayed since Clara got sick. Please let them both be okay. Please give me more time with my girl. Please let me meet this grandchild. I waited in the hospital for 8 hours. Walter showed up around dawn with coffee and sat with me, not saying much, just being there. At 11:30, Lucas came out with tears streaming down his face. "It's a girl," he said. "Rebecca's fine. The baby's perfect. And she wants you to come meet her." I followed him to the room where Rebecca lay exhausted and radiant, holding a tiny pink bundle. "Dad," she said, "meet Clara. Clara Marie, after both her grandmothers." I took that baby in my arms, 7 pounds of perfect, warm, new life, and felt something shift inside me. All the pain from last Christmas, all the hurt and anger and disappointment, it didn't disappear. But it transformed. Became part of a story that was bigger than one bad night. "Hi, Clara," I whispered. "I'm your grandpa, and I'm going to be here for every moment you'll let me." She wrapped her tiny hand around my finger, held on tight, and I realized this was what legacy actually meant. Not money in bank accounts or property in wills. This child who'd carry forward the best parts of the people who came before her. Who'd learn about love and respect and dignity from parents who'd learned those lessons the hard way. Over the next months, I was at their house 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Helping with late-night feedings. Teaching Lucas how to change diapers properly. Holding Clara while Rebecca napped. Being present in all the small, exhausting, beautiful ways that matter. On Clara's first Easter, we had dinner at my house. The old house on Maple Street with the crooked steps. Rebecca insisted on it. We sat at the mahogany table my father built. The one Rebecca hadn't wanted. The one that had held 50 years of memories before last Christmas broke the tradition. "I was wrong about this table," Rebecca said, running her hand along the worn wood. "I thought it was old-fashioned. But it's not. It's earned. Every scratch and stain tells a story about the family that used it. About you and Grandma. About what matters. It's yours," I said. "When I'm gone, take it. Use it. Teach Clara what it means." "We will." That summer, my attorney called one more time. "Howard, your estate documents are current as of the modifications we made in July. The balance you wanted. Just wanted to confirm you're satisfied." I thought about those documents. Half my savings to charity still. Money set aside for Sarah. The cabin to the veterans. The rest split between Rebecca and a trust for Clara. Balanced. Fair. Reflecting both the lesson I'd taught and the grace Rebecca had earned through real change. "I'm satisfied," I said. "Good. I'll keep them on file. Hope I don't need to think about them for another 20 years. You and me both." In September, Rebecca called on a Tuesday evening like always. "Dad, there's a community center downtown that serves Christmas dinner to seniors and people who don't have family. They're looking for volunteers to help organize this year." I'd heard about that place. Had even considered going there last Christmas when things were at their worst. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to volunteer. With you. I want Clara to grow up seeing us serve people who need it. Want her to understand that Christmas isn't about perfect tables and fancy food. It's about making sure nobody feels invisible." My throat tightened. "I'd like that. Lucas does too. We want to make it a family tradition. Ours. The kind that matters." So that's what we did. We volunteered. Served turkey and ham to widows and veterans and people who'd been forgotten by their own families. We sat with them after dinner, listened to their stories, learned their names. And when an old man, probably my age, probably with his own daughter who'd stopped calling, looked at me and said, "Thank you for making me feel like I matter," I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. Last Christmas hadn't just taught Rebecca a lesson. It had taught me one too. That dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you claim for yourself by knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to build something new on honest ground. That family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by who shows up. Who honors your presence. Who makes room at their table not because they have to, but because they can't imagine celebrating without you. On Christmas Eve, 1 year after the worst night of my life, I stood in Rebecca and Lucas's kitchen helping prepare dinner. The table was set for 5 this time. Me, Rebecca, Lucas, Walter, and a high chair for Clara. My name card sat at the head of the table, in my place, where it belonged. Before we sat down to eat, Rebecca asked me to bless the meal. I looked around that table, at my daughter who'd learned and grown, at my son-in-law who'd found his backbone, at my best friend who'd stood by me through everything, at my granddaughter who represented every good thing I'd ever done with my life. And I said the only thing that felt true. Thank you for this family. Not the family we were a year ago, but the family we've become. Thank you for second chances and hard lessons and people who love us enough to hold us accountable. And thank you for reminding us that a man's worth isn't measured by where he sits, but by how much heart he brings to the table. Amen. Amen, they echoed. We ate. We laughed. We told stories. Clara threw mashed potatoes and everyone thought it was hilarious. And when the evening ended and everyone went home, I sat in my car for a moment before driving away. I thought about that night a year ago, sitting alone by the fireplace, feeling erased, feeling worthless. I thought about the journey from that moment to this one, the pain, the boundaries, the difficult conversations, the risk of losing everything to gain back my dignity, and I realized something that made me smile. I'd found my table, not by fighting for the wrong seat, but by standing up, walking away, and letting the people who truly loved me prove they deserved a place in my life. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't anger or punishment. It's peace. It's knowing your worth. It's sitting at a table where everyone wants you there, not out of duty, but out of love. And that night, for the first time in years, I drove home feeling like the richest man alive. Not because of what I owned, but because of what I'd reclaimed. My dignity, my family, my place at a table built on respect. And that, I realized, was worth more than any inheritance I could ever leave behind. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story about standing up for yourself, finding your worth, and discovering that sometimes losing everything is how you find what truly matters. Drop a comment below telling us about a time you chose dignity over comfort. Your story might inspire someone else to do the same. Thank you for being part of this family. Until next time, remember, you deserve a seat at the table, but only at tables where your presence is honored.